A boy who carried out the sadistic murder of transgender teenager Brianna Ghey wants to appeal against his sentence. Eddie Radcliffe was jailed for life last month in order to serve 20 years before parole for the killing.
Sentencing Judge Mrs Justice Yip said the pair who committed the act would be jailed until they no longer present a danger to the public. But now, of course, this individual is appealing. Joining us to discuss this is the criminal defence lawyer, Nick Freeman. Nick, I'm flabbergasted. I listened to this judgment in full. It was watertight. There was so much evidence. I was astounded by the amount of evidence that was collected and decided upon. On what grounds on earth could this person be looking to appeal on?
Well, possibly two grounds. First of all, he was 15 at the time that he carried out the attack. But possibly more significantly than that, his father has just been jailed, I think, for 15 months for sex-related offences. And I don't remember during the trial that there was any finger of blame being pointed at his father. And it may be because his father hadn't been sentenced, but I don't know whether his lawyers are saying, look, this is fresh evidence. We weren't able to deal with this at the time, or we chose not to, but it's now out in the open. And actually, my father is largely responsible for the perverse, sadistic, disgraceful, disgusting behaviour that I carried out in relation to this poor, because it was obviously transphobic as well. So it may be. It's interesting to note she's not, Jenkinson's not appealing, and he is. So that to me is the striking point that a lawyer might try and hang his hat on. It's important to bear in mind what he would like to do is appeal. He needs to get permission from a single judge, a single senior judge in the Court of Appeal Division. It's by no means a certainty that that will be granted. If that's refused, then he can appeal again to a full court, 2 or 3 senior judges sitting in the same division. And if they refuse the appeal, then and he decides to go ahead with it, then the time that he's spent in custody will no longer apply, will no longer count towards the sentence he's doing. So he'll have to start in effect again. So I think his lawyers will advise him very carefully of the risk. We don't know what the grounds are. I haven't seen the grounds. But at the moment, it's simply for permission, and that seems to be the striking feature where he might try and point a finger of blame at his father. But I don't know what the relationship is between the two of them. But it is interesting to note, and I don't recall anybody saying anything about his father during the mitigation before they were sentenced. Of course, for murder, they have to receive a life sentence. What the judges said is you will serve a minimum of 20 years. Jenkinson will serve 22 years. She seems to be accepting that. And it doesn't mean that will be, all it means is that's the minimum. Both of them may spend the rest of their life behind bars. The parole board's got to be completely satisfied they no longer pose a threat to society. And this was such a gruesome, horrific offence that I think the parole board will take some persuading.
That's very interesting indeed. So he does have options, but they're not going to be very easy, and he'll be told of the potential consequences on his custodial time, not least. But the issue of his father being convicted for indecent exposure, I think there's some other convictions too, at least alleged crimes there as well. I guess, and of course we don't know if this is what he's appealing on the grounds of, but I guess whether as a young person he could have been influenced by his father's bad behaviour. He could have been abused himself potentially by his father. I guess these are all hypotheticals, of course, we don't know, but I guess that would be a defence.
Well, it won't be a defence. It certainly wouldn't afford a defence. It would afford mitigation. It would afford an explanation, possibly, that would reduce the sentence. There will have been a full social inquiry report, psychiatric reports, bearing in mind he's on the spectrum of autism. So there will be very extensive inquiries, reports prepared before they're both sentenced. I don't know what the relationship is with Eddie and his father. All we do know is that there is now this conviction and custodial sentence for sex offences. And I anticipate his lawyers are going to be suggesting that there was something untoward in relation to their relationship, and that the father and the way that Eddie's been brought up is to some extent responsible, and they weren't able to put that forward at the time, or they chose not to, but now they want to.
The sadism in this case was more gruesome than anything that I can remember. The discussions that these two teenagers had with one another about how they would kill Brianna Ghey, about what they would feel while they were killing Brianna Ghey, was shocking. I wonder...
Even to the extent that they told them not to get a return ticket. That's how carefully it was planned. It's mind-boggling evil. The careful planning, the sadistic nature, wanting to hear how she screamed, how her face looked as they plunged a knife into her head, her face and her back 28 times. It's horrendously gruesome. I think the sentence was absolutely right. And as you said, the judge gave a very full account as to why she thought that was the appropriate sentence.
I wonder, in your experience of criminal defence, is it very often that if a family member has been a criminal, if a father has been a criminal, is it more likely that the son or the daughter might be a criminal too?
It can work in all sorts of ways, but what you can say with certainty is if there is some pollutant behaviour by the parents and that influences the child and that in some way is responsible for the child behaving in the way that they have, that will be fully aired at the Crown Court before sentence. And I suspect that wasn't fully aired in these particular proceedings because I don't remember where he was. My recollections, I don't think he was even charged. I don't think the father was charged, was he, at the time? All I know is he received a 15-month custodial sentence since February, since the two murderers were sentenced to life imprisonment. So I think...
Yes, he was jailed 4 days before his son's trial began, so you would have thought it would have come up.
You would. I agree with you. You would. I don't know what extent it's come up, and I'm hypothesising with you as to what grounds there are. We may be completely wrong. It may be nothing to do with that. It may be, look, the judges got it wrong. I was led. He may say, look, I was led by the girl. My father's nothing to do with it. She was the one who plunged the knife, and et cetera, et cetera. But it was dealt with on the basis of a joint enterprise, and they did blame each other at the time. And I just don't think that I'd be surprised if permission is granted for this appeal to proceed. But we'll wait and see because we just don't know the grounds.
Yeah, we'll wait and see for those grounds and whether or not it is allowed. But my goodness, what a sadistic and evil murder. Nick Freeman, really appreciate your thoughts on this matter. Really, really interesting stuff.